Hi, this is Robert Clinky-Beard with the Commercial Landscaper Podcast. We're going to take 20 minutes to deliver some amazing content from accomplished leaders and business owners to provide you with some value to scale your business and to become a better leader and push yourself out of your comfort zone. We encourage you to like and share with everyone to spread our messages. I'm super excited to announce our new partnership with Weathermatic. For most landscape companies, irrigation is an untapped gold mine for growth and profit, but labor and process problems stand in the way. So Weathermatic has created a partnership to package mobile technology and software with proven business solutions to tackle the perennial irrigation challenges and take your operations to a whole new level. I encourage you to reach out to Weathermatic and learn more. Cheers, everyone. Hi, this is Robert Clinky-Beard with the Commercial Landscaper Podcast. I'm really excited today to be joined by Mike Bogan. Mike, we've passed each other a few times in various industry events, so I'm glad we finally managed to catch up and glad you're on the show. I'm really excited.
It's my pleasure, Robert. I've obviously known of you in our industry for a while, and we've had the chance to make a few connections here or there, and this will be fun to have a deeper conversation today, and glad that we've got the time together and honored that you're interested in hearing what I have to say.
Absolutely. Mike, we have a lot of listeners from, obviously the States, Canada, Europe, even across into Asia. Nobody knows Mike Bogan. Tell me about you, your background, a little bit about LandCare. They'd be all super interested.
Sure. I've been in this industry all of my professional career. So I got a job in high school. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. I got my first job in high school at a garden center, and I got to work there with selling retail plants to customers, and learned a little bit about how to identify them and a little bit about customer service, but also at times got to go out on a landscape crew. And that experience for me was really fulfilling. I loved the way we could take an environment that might be old and tired and need a refresh. And when we were done with our work, it changed the way people would experience that space. And I probably couldn't use all those words to describe it when I was in high school, but that's what I realized was happening. And that led me to pursue a degree in landscape architecture at Mississippi State University, my alma mater. I studied there. I earned my degree. I met my wife, who was also a landscape architect.
Okay, nice.
Probably the best thing that happened there, but also got a deeper education in the industry, really affirmed that this is what I wanted to do with my life. I found my first job out of school in Washington, D.C. And I found that job through what's now called NCLC, which is the National Association of Landscape Professionals, NALP, our big national association. It's their annual student competition and career fair. And that happens every year in March. When I was a sophomore, it happened at my school at Mississippi State. And it was the first time I was exposed to how significant the industry is and the broad range of employers all across the country who were interested in hiring young students like me. Prior to that, I thought, being a landscape professional would be finishing school, getting a pickup truck, and hiring some friends and getting to work. And I know it is for a lot of people, and that's awesome. But for me, I learned about big companies and other cities doing extensive projects, and I was really attracted to that. So I started my career in Washington, D.C. with a regional company. Within 2 years, had met and become friends with Scott Brickman, who was the grandson of the founder of the Brickman Group. And Scott ultimately brought me onto their team, and we worked together for 23 years. I spent the bulk of my career at the Brickman Group. I did everything. I was an account manager. I was a branch manager. I was a regional vice president, and then a divisional vice president. And at the end of my career, I was the executive vice president of the company, and served on our executive team and led a chunk of our operations in the western half of the U.S. I left there in 2012. Longer story for another podcast, but
right.
My time there was done. I took a little bit of time off, and in the meantime, met with the owners of what was then called True Green LandCare. And True Green LandCare, as those who have been in the industry for a while know, was two businesses that merged in 2000, end of 1999 or early 2000. One was True Green and their landscape business. So we know them today as a lawn care business, but in the 90s, they decided to get into landscaping as well. and they did several major acquisitions to build a national footprint. At the same time, a company called LandCare had been created by venture capitalists, and they were doing an industry roll-up or buying, through M&A, building a national footprint for their company. They merged those two businesses, and that became TruGreen LandCare. Over the next 12 years, that business had every challenge that a business can have. And 2011, it sold on the cusp of bankruptcy, separated out of the TruGreen Lawn Care business and out of the Service Master family, and was sold to a private equity fund that specializes in turnarounds or taking what they call distressed assets and finding value in them. So I was hired by them in 2014 to be their new CEO and to try to facilitate a turnaround. So they'd owned the business for 3 years and had very little success in making progress with that. But some interesting things were happening in 2014. The industry had evolved significantly. Many of my former coworkers and friends at Brickman were not enjoying the way that company had evolved. So it had a new CEO. It had a new private equity owner. It merged with Valleycrest, this Berber family business, and then went public. And so all of those things created an atmosphere for many of the people that I was connected to that made them interested in trying to find another place to pursue their professional endeavors. And it gave me an opportunity to bring many of them together here at LandCare under this company, under my leadership. And that team helped me facilitate a turnaround of the business. We worked really hard to first change the way the company operates, then rebrand the company, and then grow the company. And we've had a lot of success with that. By 2019, it was clear to me that the private equity group had achieved the kind of value that they would want in the business and that it would soon be for sale. And I moved to buy it from them so that we could forever control the way the company would be run in the future. So we completed that transaction in 2019, myself and my senior leadership team and some friends and family investors that helped me raise the capital. And we have owned the company since 19 and will for the future. It's a business that we know we will never sell to private equity. We'll never go public. We'll hold the stock privately because it allows us to have constancy of purpose at LandCare. And that means we can stay focused on the things that are important to us. So there you go. There's a long answer to Mike Bogan.
No, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Who am I and who is LandCare? That's the story.
No, that's awesome. I mean, congratulations. And I mean, just to give people I suppose, a sense of scale of where you're at right now. I mean, don't necessarily have to be revenue numbers, but in terms of number of employees is a good indicator.
We're about 3,500, just shy of 4,000 at peak employment, about 320 million in annual revenue. And we operate in 25 states, most major cities in the United States.
Cool. Awesome.
And our work is primarily commercial landscape management. So we do all things that are related to that, including construction projects, but primarily for our existing customers, not out competing on, in a hard bid situation. So yeah, that's our business focus. It's our areas of interest, and that's our story that gets us to 2023.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you, Mike. One of the things you brought up was how people followed you across from Brickman. You did an excellent presentation down in Dallas for the Elevate event and talked about employee first. I'd love to just hear a little bit more about, because it's tough when you're dealing with, nearly 4,000 employees. How do you spread that message and get that down to the field workers? Awesome
question, and one that's a great setup for me because I love to talk about our team members. Robert, had a tremendous professional experience when I was at Brickman. I worked for a company that really invested in its team members, that believed the strength of our organization was in our interpersonal relationships, the relationships we had with each other at work and the relationships we had with our clients. And they worked hard to develop skills in us to be and to create a culture that was really conducive to that kind of development. So what it meant for me, I like to say this, It allowed me to grow into a more effective landscape professional, but it also allowed me to grow into a more effective human being. And I felt like the way I learned to relate to people outside of work, meaning my children and my family and my friends, all grew because of the experiences that I had at work. I thought that was great to work for a company like that. In fact, I grew to develop this idea that work is an important and integral part of life. Kind of helped me develop this idea, or I should say almost a resentment towards concept of work-life balance, which seems to teach people that to have more work, you're going to have less life, and to have more life, you have to have less work, and that they are at opposition to each other. And I've never had that experience. In my life, I live at work, and I want people to live at work while they're at LandCare. And what I mean by that is, the best parts of life that I've experienced are the opportunity to grow, to be challenged, to learn, to find out what you're capable of as a person, to be in enriching relationships where you help others grow and where others help you grow. These are all some of the best things that happen in life. To have fun and to laugh and to enjoy yourself and to experience the full range of emotions, to be frustrated and angry and figure out how to deal with those things. This is what life is. And I think you should experience all of those things at work, and you shouldn't feel like it's one or the other, that they can really mesh well together. And work should be something that's fulfilling for you, not a place where you go to be drained until you leave and then you can find something to do again. So, those perspectives on work and on life and how I kind of grew up in that first career of mine really guided me to wanting to create that again at LandCare. And I felt like where the industry was many years ago, that there just wasn't a large national company that you could pursue those things and feel that way and have those experiences. And again, the merger between Brickman and Valleycrest had created a very different kind of organization. And I didn't know why at the time that it felt so different. I've come to kind of understand it much better, and I'll explain that in a second. But for me, the mission at LandCare was, hey, let's create a place that really focuses on the team members, allows them to have a great experience, and to grow and develop in important ways as human beings. And let's make that our mission and what we're here for.
I love that. Yeah, one of the things I think companies do a half decent job at to reach out to their clients just to sort of see how they're doing, finger on the pulse, how's the quality, how's the communication of the account managers. But they really do a similar job with their employees, just getting down to feel the pulse of field workers. How's the communication? Are we treating you well? How do you get down to that type of level? When you're dealing with 4,000 employees, it's obviously quite tough. But how do you try and get that feedback?
The first thing I would tell you is that when we say we're an employee first company, that we kind of have a methodology of how we can say employees first. And that kind of implies that there's something second or something third, or, where do other important entities fall? And one of the things I would tell you about being a company that practices capitalism like LandCare does is that we are here to serve all of our stakeholders, and we do not prioritize our shareholders at the top of that list. And the ownership structure of a public company or even a private equity company causes those in control, just the way that they're designed, to focus on the shareholder. That's who they're there to serve. And that's who will decide if they'll continue to lead the company or not. So they have to focus on the shareholder. We don't have to put the shareholder first. And as a company that practices conscious capitalism, we think about our body of stakeholders. And in that body are our employees, our customers, our vendor partners, our suppliers, our communities that we serve, the environment, and our shareholders. And I would tell you, I actually think of them in that order. So we put our employees first, we put our customers second, we put our vendors and suppliers third, then community, then environment, and finally shareholders. So they're all important. It's not to say that the ones at the bottom are so far at the bottom of the list that they don't get consideration. They all get consideration. But our decisions start with what's best for our team members. And that's how we get to that ability to say, and we test ourselves with, are the decisions we're making putting our employees first? Are we truly employee-centric? And can we say we mean it with the decisions that we make? I'm not answering your question. You said, how do I get feedback and how do I communicate with them to see how we're doing? But I thought it was important to kind of clarify that vision of being an employee-first business and our company and how we carry that out. In terms of understanding how we're doing, we do annual employee survey, engagement surveys to get their feedback on how they feel about the company, the decisions that we're making, how we're running it, what would make it feel better for them. That's one of the questions they get asked. If you could change anything to make the company better for you, what would you change? And we ask our team members that. We have, up until this year, 2023, we have extended that survey to all of our salaried employees, which is really all of our managers. Another way of saying that is everyone with an email address for LandCare.
Right.
When we get to our crew members, we struggle to communicate with them with the same level of effectiveness because, one, we're in 63 different locations. Two, we don't have a direct pipeline of communication, or didn't, I should say. And we've been working over the past 3 years to develop that and create more back and forth dialogue from our frontline employees. So some of the initiatives that we're using are WhatsApp groups, text messaging, and email communications. And we've had great success with all of those. And this year we'll actually, in fact, this month, this October, we're actually creating our first survey that will go out to every team member in the company. So frontline hourly crew members as well. And it's been a goal for a few years. We've just struggled to get to a way that we felt like we would get enough of a response rate to make it an effective sample survey. So in answer to your question, we haven't historically had the best pipeline back and forth, but we've moved to change that. I'm excited that we've got a place to start this year.
Awesome. That's awesome. That's great. I mean, you must be probably seeing that.
I do, though, Robert. Let me interject this. We measure employee turnover at every branch. So we do have an idea where things are working for us, right? And employee turnover is a fair approximation for engagement. If you've got high turnover, you can assume that you've got maybe some cultural issues there or some management practices that aren't as effective, or maybe it's our hiring practices. But we know we've got a challenge and we address that. So I wanted to put that out there. We do watch that data, and where we see a challenge with turnover and it kind of reaching higher numbers than our typical branches do, then we know we've got to go there and ask some questions and test what's going on. But I'm sorry, you were going to ask another question.
No, you actually, that was the question I was going to ask you. I mean, that must be showing up in your employee retention numbers. So you actually addressed that for me. But, I think, getting their feedback, I think, is great. But, having almost like a mission or a purpose, it also, I think, helps with employee retention. Yes, we can throw money at them and maybe some other benefits, but get behind something that you're passionate about. And obviously with, LandCare is that, that future forward sustainability framework. And I think a lot of CEOs get sort of caught up in maybe, how do I introduce that? Why is that something your company is passionate about? And what are some of the tactics that you use just to sort of really drive that home to your employees?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned that we have 6 stakeholders that we consider that our business is here to serve and that we have a responsibility to. And one of those I mentioned is the environment. I believe that it is our responsibility as a company to practice our work in a way that is respectful to the environment. It needs to be here to serve others in the future. And if we do our work irresponsibly, we damage its ability to provide the same resources to the generations that will come after us. So if we and look, it's LandCare, it's the industry, and it's all industry for that matter. If we put too much carbon into the environment, we know we're going to damage our ozone layer and our ability to live on this planet long term. If we're indiscriminate with our natural resources, they won't be there, for future generations to call on and use. So these are responsibilities we have, and we feel like it's the responsibility of all companies, whether they actually place a high value on it or not. It is their responsibility. But we look at that and say, what can we do to run our business in a way that observes and respects the environment? And that's really practicing sustainability in every way that we can. Our current focus right now is on the energy we consume and the carbon that we emit. So trying to move towards electrification everywhere that we can. We feel like we're on the front edge of that, and we're kind of running parallel with the equipment that's being created and generated for our use. So it's really just now getting to a point where they perform at a high level. And even if it's not exactly where every piece of gas equipment would perform, it's close enough that the inefficiencies that are there can be overcome by the other benefits that they bring to us. So we're working aggressively in that respect. I'll have, for 2024, by the end of the year, I'll probably have 25% of our branches fully electric with respect to equipment. Management vehicles are almost there for us at the same rate. So we've moved our management vehicles that direction. Our production vehicles are lagging behind just because we're wanting to move faster than what the market is providing us options for. So as you well know, there's just not enough options out there to do the work that we do. Trucks that will plow snow and pull large equipment around or move large amounts of materials. And so we've got to work with what's available, but we're ready for that. It's an initiative that is really driven by our own sense of responsibility. I think in some cases, you're seeing states and municipalities push people that direction. I'm all for it. I think that the nudges by them are helpful and what will force change. Yeah, I'm excited about those changes in our business, and our team members are too. I think there was some trepidation immediately when you told account managers they were going to get a fully electric car. They were going to have to, plan a little bit more around their schedule to make sure they had the charge trucks they need. Yep, and work effectively for them. But to a person, they've all been excited about what they have, and I think it resonates in the market effectively, both with potential employees and with customers. We've got customers that are asking for it too, right? That are ready for it and are looking for that, but I would not say that's the biggest driver, nor is regulation the biggest driver. The biggest driver for us is feeling like it's where our responsibility lies as the environment is considered a stakeholder.
No, that's awesome. I'm hugely passionate about sustainability. I've had some speakers on talking about it. I even remember when I had my company, we had all of our managers on, electric cars. That's probably, 9-10 years ago. So yeah, hugely passionate myself about it. I think employees do embrace that. I was even hearing one interesting statistic this morning that, something like deleting 1,000 emails will save 9 tons of carbon. So it's just crazy statistics like that. So I definitely think there's a big movement. I think, unfortunately, the States are a little bit behind Europe, but I think we'll get there eventually. I applaud you for doing that. And I think the other thing is important to say, not only are you doing this, within your company, but the fact that you've served on the NLP board. So again, to insert that influence across the industry as a whole, I think is huge. So I appreciate that, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm not the pioneer in this area. I'm the follower, and there's some awesome NALP board members and general members that are also deeply passionate about these issues. And I'm grateful. They share with me what they've learned and where some of the pitfalls are. And one of the great things about our association, the willingness to share with others. From small companies that operate in communities that I don't have a presence in, that are just willing to share whatever they've learned, to big companies that we go head to head with, and compete for the same work and in multiple markets. They're all willing to share what they've learned, and vice versa. I'm willing to share with them. I don't think that those pieces of information are the things that make our company different or better for a particular customer. So it's awesome that there's that much collaboration amongst the industry.
Yeah, that's great. That's what some of the great things about our industry. One of the things you touched on was, M&A, private equity. I know we're wrapping up here in a minute, but what do you see going on out there in terms of, and how do you see it playing out over the next 2 or 3 years? Because you get a lot of young companies are getting calls every day. They're saying, should I sell? Do I stay in it? How do I compete against these big companies now? So I'd love to just hear your perspective and how the industry is moving right now.
Yeah, my first exposure to private equity in our industry was 26 years ago when they invested in the Brickman Group and became partners at that company. So I watched what having a variety of different partners felt like in that organization. I watched what it felt like to have minority partners and then control partners in the business. And I watched how it changed the business over time, in some ways for the better and in some ways not. And I've watched now as it's spread from 2 or 3 companies in the space to literally hundreds of companies that are private equity owned and have their influence in their equity structure. So is it going to change? Is it here to stay? You better believe it's here to stay. It is unlikely that you'll see them migrate away from that ownership structure. Does it mean that you can't compete if you're a privately owned or privately held company? Absolutely not. You can compete just as effectively as you can compete with any other company. So I don't think there are any advantages that they have when it comes to serving customers, engaging employees, training employees, and building a great company. So those things I think are real important to put out there right off the bat. What are the advantages to having private equity in our industry? I think it starts with the most obvious, which is exit prices for owners who want to sell their business. There's somebody out there that is going to value that higher than what another potential buyer might, meaning another potential individual. And that's because they have a vision. They have a bet that they're going to be able to take that business, grow its EBITDA, and which is a measure of profitability and cash flow. They're going to be able to grow that to a rate and then be able to sell that business for more than they paid for it. And that's really as simple than that. You can boil it down to kind of how a real estate investor buys a home and puts some money into it to try to create more value and then flips it. That's what private equity is doing. They're flipping businesses, not in 6 months or a year. It's usually 3 to 5 years, but that's their model. And if you kind of understand how they operate, they have to do that. They're not really pulling cash flow out of the company. They're using the cash flow in the company for growth. They're using it to service debt, which they'll often put on the company. And they don't have a way of returning capital to their investors, short of putting a lot of debt on the company to take a dividend or selling the business at a profit. It's a clear focus of there's a 3 to 5 year window. I've got to create more profit in this business, and then I've got to sell it at a higher multiple than what I bought it for. So that's their playbook in the industry, and I think it makes them look at things with a different view. We've all watched how companies that have quarterly reports do that, if they're publicly owned, how they make different decisions every quarter as the quarter comes to an end so that they can present in the best light and improve their stock price. Private equity has the same kind of windows. They're just larger. Instead of being 3-month windows, they're 3-year windows, but they have the same challenges. As that 3-year window starts to come up, they have to look at maximizing the way the business operates and the cash flow that it throws off so that they can generate the best price for it. That's not always what's best in the way that you run a company. Sometimes the economy throws challenges your way. Sometimes the weather is going to impact the way your cash flow runs. But those are things that if you own a business for a lifetime, you think about differently and you manage through differently. But if you're owning a business to sell it in 3 years, you're making decisions in a different way. I'm not trying to speak to you about something that you already understand, but kind of explaining where the differences come from when you own a business forever. And that was one of the lessons I learned from Scott Brickman's father, Dick Brickman, early in my professional career. And that is, if you operate a business there at Brickman, he said, operate it as if you're in business for a lifetime. Not a week, not a month, not a year. Operate as if you're in business for a lifetime. Make the right decisions for the long run. Don't put off doing a repair on a vehicle because it's the end of the month. Don't hold back services for a customer because it's the end of the year and you're trying to maximize the profitability in that one period. Those are short-term decisions and they will come back to haunt you. They'll ultimately erode your brand in the marketplace. Make your decisions as if you're in business for a lifetime. And I think that's so important. It's how LandCare has arrived at this view of we have constancy of purpose. Our purpose isn't changing. We're not focused on hitting a hurdle in a certain window of time to maximize an exit multiple or the most EBITDA we can. We're building a business for long-term success.
That's
so
great.
That's again, gives a different view. What does it mean for people? There will be companies like ours that stay independent, that view private equity for what it is. If I summed up private equity, here's the good, here's the bad. It's generally good for the seller, the owner of the business. they get to put a big check in their pocket. It's not often as good for the employees in the business.
Right.
And, we're companies of employees. If we were companies that were really built around hard assets or intellectual property, and you were selling them and flipping them, maybe less impactful. But when you're doing that with human beings that belong to a culture, believe in the way a company's built, chose to be there because of how it made them feel, and then they get merged into another culture without any choice in the matter, not always a positive impact.
Yeah, that's probably the most difficult piece, is just merging two cultures together. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But no, those are great words of advice for just some of these up and coming companies and owners who are just trying to navigate through where they take the company. But I love your idea about, growing the company for the long term. Don't make those short-term decisions, because these usually end up biting you, especially when it comes to customers or employees. Mike, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. Thank you for your time. I know you're a busy guy, but I really have obviously been keen getting you on the podcast, sharing your message with all my listeners in the industry. So thank you very much, Mike.
Robert, again, I'm flattered that you asked, and grateful for the time to share with you. And anytime, would love to come back and visit again. So I hope you'll reach out.
Hopefully that was pure dead brilliant to you, and you got some great takeaways for your business or your leadership role. This is Robert Clinkybeard, and I'd love to get you and your friends to join us in a future journey. So please subscribe to the various podcast channels or visit the commerciallandscaper.com or wilson360.com. Big thank you again to our partner Weathermatic, and I really encourage you to reach out to them and see about irrigation solutions or partnership with them. Hopefully you have a pure dead brilliant day. Cheers, everyone.